These were the biggest cargo aircraft of World War II, and they started their life as gliders to carry troops and equipment in the planned invasion of Britain. They were used in many roles during the war, and were great propaganda assets for the German media. So today we will take a look at the Messerschmitt Me 321 and Me 323 transport aircrafts. After the fall of France in 1940, Hitler's eyes turned towards Britain. Because the British, despite the increased pressure, showed no willingness to negotiate, on 16th of July, Hitler issued Directive 16, setting the planning of Operation Sea Lion in motion. For the operation to succeed, the directive pointed out several conditions. Germany needed total air superiority, full control of the English Channel, and the Royal Navy had to be so preoccupied in the North Sea and the Mediterranean that they cannot intervene in an invasion. During the planning, it was realized that the current transport aircrafts didn't have enough capacity for an invasion of this scale. So what do you do if you need lots of large capacity aircrafts for an operation like this, preferably built fast and cheap? You look into gliders, which can be built from cheap materials, doesn't require engines and lots of maintenance, and one towing aircraft can make several turns, towing and releasing them towards their target. Though gliders were in military use well before World War II, they were mostly smaller in size and could only carry a handful of men and no heavy equipment. The DFS-230, though it was a capable glider, was only able to carry 9 men, and though it was used successfully during the war in many operations, like the Battle of Crete or the rescuing of Benito Mussolini, it was not designed for a large-scale operation like the invasion of Britain would be. The GO-242 was designed to replace the DFS-230. It was bigger and could carry 20 men, but it was still too small and light to be used in a huge operation like the one the Germans planned. So in October 1940, the Luftwaffe Technical Bureau issued a tender for a large-capacity cargo glider, and sent it to Junkers and Messerschmitt, and they were given 14 days to submit their designs. The requirements, compared to the earlier gliders, were very ambitious and envisioned enormous aircrafts. They asked for the ability to carry either a Panzer IV medium tank, or an 88mm gun and a half-track truck, or entire companies of men. That meant around 25 tons of cargo capacity. And the gliders would have to be built from non-strategic materials. The tender was named Project Warsaw, and the Junkers design was given the Warsaw Ost, and the Messerschmitt design the Warsaw Süd codename. Both companies entered their design for this tender. Junkers with the Ju-322, and Messerschmitt with the Me 321, which was originally called Me 263, but later renamed to 321. Though Operation Sea Lion was abandoned in December 1940, it was never officially cancelled. The work on the big assault gliders continued. Junkers designed the Ju-322 Mammoth, an all-wooden glider with a length of 30.2 meters and a wingspan of 62 meters, with a capacity of carrying 140 fully equipped troops or 20,000 kilograms of cargo. But the all-wood construction caused troubles for Junkers, as it turned out the design was not strong enough, so cargo capacity was limited to 12,000 kilograms. Its maiden flight was not very successful either. In April 1941, towed by a 4-engine Ju-90 transport aircraft, it took off but turned out to be very unstable, and with its huge wing area, it gained altitude faster than a towing aircraft. It had to be released prematurely, and although it managed to glide without an incident, it landed on a field and took weeks to recover due to its size. Because of its instability and the overall weak construction, the project was dropped a month later, although improvements were planned to correct the faults. The Messerschmitt design fared much better. It had a steel tube frame design with wooden wings and fabric covering. Its size was almost the same as the Junkers design, with a length of 28 meters and a wingspan of 55 meters. With these dimensions, both designs were comparable in size to a B-29 bomber. The cargo space on the Me 231 was designed to the same dimensions as a railway car, so it could take any load delivered on train and featured a front loading ramp. The Messerschmitt glider made its maiden flight in February 1941 without any incidents. The only problem found was that the controls were very heavy and sluggish. But Messerschmitt fixed this problem, fitting electric servos to assist and adding dual controls and a co-pilot position. The takeoff procedure, on the other hand, was troublesome for the massive aircraft. The originally planned Ju-90 aircrafts were not powerful enough to tow a loaded glider. So the Germans came up with the idea to use 3 Bf-110 twin-engined heavy fighters in a V formation. Reusable rocket boosters were also used on the glider to help with the takeoff. These were ignited during the takeoff procedure, and as the aircraft gained altitude, they were jettisoned and landed with their own parachute. Towing the massive glider with 3 aircraft was highly dangerous, as any error meant a huge accident, and it wouldn't take long for this accident to happen. In 1941, a malfunction on takeoff led to the collision of the towing planes, and eventually the death of all the crews and passengers on all 4 planes, altogether 129 men. During one of his visits at the Heinkel factory, Ernst Udet requested Heinkel to come up with a solution, which led to the design of the HG-111Z plane, which was basically 2 HG-111 bombers mated together, featuring a double fuselage and 5 engines. I have already made a video on the Heinkel HG-111, so if you're interested in the history of those bombers, check it out. See the link in the description or at the end of this video. But these newly developed Heinkel planes were not available in big numbers. And when these giant gliders were towed by the Bf-110s, the range was unsatisfactory. Even when used with the new HG-111 twin aircrafts, the biggest problems with the gliders weren't addressed. Lacking their own power, if they made a mistake approaching an airfield, they couldn't go around and try again, and after landing they were unable to move. So in early 1942, a decision was made to develop a motorized version of the giant plane. This was the Me-323. Actually, plans to build a motorized version were in talks right after the production of the Me-321 was approved, but they only started to materialize in 1942. To avoid putting additional stress to the German industry, the plans used French 14-cylinder engines on this aircraft. The first trials were conducted with using only 4 engines installed. This configuration solved some of the problems. The new plane could taxi on the ground, and it could fly empty, but it wasn't powerful enough to take off when loaded. It still needed towing planes and rocket boosters to get off the ground. So the V2 variant was created using 6 engines, and this became the base for the Me-323D series. This variant had a 12-ton payload, though many times they flew with more than that. The Me-323 had 2 flight engineers on board in different stations, one in each wing monitoring the engines. During its production, the Me-323 went through several variants, featuring different engine, armament, and other modifications. For example, starting with the E variant, gun turrets were built in the wings to increase defensive armament. There were some interesting experimental versions, like the Me-323E2 WT, where the WT stands for Waffenträger, weapons carrier. This variant didn't carry any cargo. It was intended as a heavily armed gunship variant to protect the other planes. It featured 20mm cannons, additional turrets and armor plating, and more machine gun posts, including another 2 turrets in the wings. 2 prototypes were built, but in the end it didn't go to production. The other interesting variant was the Me-323Z, which was a twin variant just like the HG-111Z, featuring dual fuselage joined at the wing. The Me-321 and 323 both were 28.2 meters long with a wingspan of 55.2 meters. The Me-321 had a cargo capacity of 20,000 kilograms, while the 323 could carry 12,000 kilograms. The Me-321 had a maximum tow speed of 180 km an hour, and its range depended on the towing aircraft. The 323 used 6 14-cylinder engines, each of them producing 1,180 horsepower. Had a maximum speed of 285 km an hour, a range of 800 km, and a service ceiling of 4,000 meters. The first Me-321 entered service in May 1941. First towed by the WWII F-110 setups, which, as we mentioned earlier, was very dangerous and caused a huge accident costing 129 lives. In July the same year, some Me-321s were transferred to the Eastern Front, but even to get there, they had to make 4 or 5 stops because of the short range of the towing aircrafts. As it turned out, they were not very useful on the Eastern Front. When the airfields got too muddy, they couldn't even take off. And the earlier mentioned problems, like the lack of own power to taxi on the ground, too short range, and dangerous towing setup caused all kinds of problems. So early 1942 they were withdrawn from the East, and later planned to participate in several operations, like the invasion of Malta, but their part was cancelled because of the lack of towing aircraft. In 1943 they were sent to the Eastern Front again during the Battle of Stalingrad, but there were no airfields in good enough shape to accommodate them by the time they got there, so they were pulled back again. Finally, in December 1943, the Heavy Glider Command was disbanded altogether. Some of the gliders were converted to Me-323s, but most of them were scrapped. The first Me-323 group was organized in Leipheim in 1942, and then moved to Greece and later to Italy, near Naples. Because German and Italian shipping suffered heavy losses on the Mediterranean, they started delivering cargo to the Africa Corps, flying to Tunis and Bizerta. They carried mostly weapons, armored vehicles, and oversized cargo, and on the way back wounded and prisoners. The slow and huge planes became juicy targets for the Allied fighters, but usually, though they were quite defenseless, they were not easy to shut down, as most of the insides were empty space, that is, until they started carrying ammunition and fuel, when suddenly they became very vulnerable. Some of them were lost during these operations, but the greatest loss happened on 22nd of April 1943, when 27 of them were flying, loaded with cargo under fighter escort, when they were attacked by Allied fighters. In the following air battle, 16 of these slow giants were shot down and lost, together with 119 men. That was almost 10% of the total of these aircrafts built, lost in just one day, as during the war only 198 of them were built. After the Allied attack on Italy, they were transferred to Poland and started delivering cargo on the Eastern Front. Their losses started to mount here, thanks to flying missions back-to-back and the worsening situation in the air, as the luftwaffe grew weaker. By the end of the war, most of them were destroyed, many blown up by the Germans on the ground when they couldn't get away from approaching Soviet forces, because lack of fuel, or if the airfields were not in good enough shape for them to take off. Sadly, none of them survived the war. Only some parts can be found in various museums. That is all that's left from these giants of the sky, the biggest cargo plane of World War II. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please leave a like, subscribe to my channel, and in the comments let me know if there's any interesting events or vehicles you'd like to see.